Hello and welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. Kay Murray, Shaka, Hislop and Alejandro Moreno back from his vacation and here with us in the studio, refreshed.
Really?
We've been waiting.
Really?
We've been waiting for a long time with you.
We've been missing you. We're kicking off tonight's show by talking about Viktor Gyokeres. We're still waiting for an official announcement of that move to Arsenal. However, there are reports that there have been a major breakthrough in talks this evening. So we're welcoming in Ian Darke to talk more about this. And let's say this does go ahead, Ian. What's your take on the move?
I think it's a good move because Arsenal have been crying out for a goal-scoring number 9. We don't know yet whether Gyokeres can do in England. He did it at Coventry in the Championship. Whether he can do in the Premier League what he's been doing for Sporting Lisbon. But let's face it, what he's been doing for Sporting Lisbon has been pretty sensational over quite a long period now. So Arsenal have looked at it, they've thought about it, and this is the target that they've gone for. So I think the deal's going to happen. I think they're just talking about the terms, the way it's going to be paid, the possible add-ons, that sort of thing, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. So I think Gyokeres is going to be an Arsenal player, and it will be fascinating to see how he goes in the Premier League.
Is that the final piece, Shaka, that Arsenal need to win the title?
It's a much needed, long overdue piece. To Ian's point, we still have to wait to see exactly how Viktor Gyokeres settles into the Premier League. Everything we've seen, certainly at Sporting, suggests, as Ian says, suggests that he should provide goals. The one thing, and to your question about the final piece, that I feel Arsenal have been missing for the last few years is that out-and-out goal scorer, that target man up front. If Gyokeres can do that, it certainly makes Arsenal a whole lot better. Making Arsenal better, while that's good in a vacuum, so has so many other clubs in the Premier League.
A lot of draws last season, Ale. That's what we're looking at here on this graphic. Had they had that striker, that target man up front, could that have changed for them and given them 3 points in some of these games?
Well, yes. Now, we're assuming that in these games they didn't come from behind or they didn't score a late goal in order to tie it up. But I get your point. I understand where you're coming from with this. And what I would say is, if Arsenal's expectations are, and as it should be, to win the Premier League, then what's it going to take for Viktor Gyokeres? What sort of productivity do we need to have from this player in order for Arsenal to be indeed in this title race? Well, you look at Liverpool, and you look at Manchester City, and you look at Mohamed Salah, and you look at Erling Haaland, and you're looking at somewhere around 40 goals a season in all competitions. Now, he's coming from scoring 54 in Sporting. I'm not going to devalue the importance of scoring 54 goals because that's a lot of goals. That is a bunch of goals. Having said that, we need to assume that it's going to be more difficult for him in the Premier League, and that his level of productivity and consistency needs to be at the level of Salah and Erling Haaland. Now, that's historic levels, but that's what it's going to take for Arsenal to turn those games that you mentioned, those draws, into wins, and to turn those single points into 3 points, and to actually be there in the end where they think they should be. That's a big question. It's also a little bit concerning for me. All we know from Viktor Gyokeres, if we're really honest with ourselves, because none of us are sitting back watching the Portuguese league every weekend. We're not doing it, okay? And that's the truth, right? And anybody that tells you, no, I'm all about it. Oh, I know what's happening between Sporting and Gil Vicente. Yeah, no, you don't. So what we know is what we have seen in Champions League from Viktor Gyokeres. And we have the lasting image of how silly he made Manchester City look. And that was impressive. But then you ask yourself the question, well, who didn't make Manchester City look silly last season defensively? And so if that's the standard, then we have to be careful that that's the expectation we have for this player, because it is also true that in the defining moments of Champions League competition for Sporting, he was not first choice. Konrad Harder was. Again, since I'm not watching the Portuguese league every weekend, I cannot tell you how good Konrad Harder is or isn't. But I can tell you that if my guy, Viktor Gyokeres, is the difference maker, then how come he's not starting that first game against Borussia Dortmund in the defining stages of this competition? And it was like that for the last few matches in the group phase as well. Or not group phase, league phase. Maybe some injury concerns, maybe some issues here and there. I'm not going to speculate. But it would be nice to have the conversation. I don't have access to Rui Borges, the manager of Sporting, and ask him the question, how come he wasn't playing in these games? Because that is something that would tell us a lot about Viktor Gyokeres and what his potential actually is with Arsenal.
What do you think, Ian, on him being that missing piece for Arsenal?
Well, I think he's got to have a better goal-scoring return, hasn't he? I think you put up some figures there with Havertz as the leading goal scorer, but I think he was only single figures in the Premier League. So Arsenal had the best defence in the Premier League last season, and yet they finished 10 points behind Liverpool, who won the championship. So it's easy to see where the problems were. I mean, we just don't know. It is a question mark, as Shaka and Ali are saying. It's a question mark about whether he's going to be able to do it in the Premier League. Not everybody can, as we've seen from Darwin Núñez, who's recently come from Portugal. But my guess is, having seen a bit of Gyokeres, he's had a long apprenticeship, as a player. He's not an overnight sensation. He's learned his trade at a lot of smaller clubs. He knows about the physicality in English football because he played in the Championship for Coventry. I think he's going to come off, and I think Arsenal have done their homework, and they think he's going to come off. And you look at the kind of team they're going to have out there. They're going to have Madueke, who could be dangerous from either wing, although a little inconsistent. Saka, Gyokeres, Zubimendi, Odegaard and Rice in midfield. It looks a pretty tasty outfit, doesn't it, if the Gyokeres signing works?
Yeah, let's obviously, Ian, you've just touched there on those transfers. Let's talk about Arsenal's transfer business so far. It sounds as though you think that they could be the extra missing pieces as well as Gyokeres for this season.
Well, they've got a big gap to bridge, I think, to Liverpool, who, as you all know, have spent very big themselves. So, they're not complacent. They've restocked pretty spectacularly, as have Manchester City and Chelsea. So it's been a mad, crazy summer in the transfer market with over £1 billion being spent. I think we're going to have a heck of a title race this season. But, Arsenal have been runners-up 3 times running. They're going to be in that title race. Whether they can win it, well, we're going to have to wait and see for that.
Yeah, you wonder how confident Mikel Arteta himself is about whether Arsenal can win the title this season, because we've been hearing from the Arsenal manager on how many clubs are actually in the title race this season. And this is what he had to say. The thing is, there are another 6, 7, 8 clubs in the league that have the right ingredients to win, and there is only going to be one winner. So we have to focus a lot on the things that we can control, that we can do to achieve what we want at the end of the season. 9 clubs have what it takes. Is he already diluting expectations for Arsenal here?
Either that or he's contradicting expectations on everybody else. Let's be honest. And while Mikel Arteta is free to say whatever he wants and how he feels, and clearly, as a manager, you don't downplay the threat of anybody else. You take nobody for granted. That's just kind of standard. And Arteta says what he says. But I am fairly confident. You poll 100 football fans, 100 people like us who give opinions, it's going to come down to 3 clubs. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City. There may be a couple who may offer Chelsea, but I'm not sure how serious they'll be in that. So the truth is, it's one of 3, regardless of what Mikel Arteta may feel about the threat of Brighton and Nottingham Forest.
Why is he saying this, LA?
Lies! Lies upon lies. Lies, I tell you. It's deflecting attention away from the expectations that are going to be in Arsenal, whether he likes it or not. Pay attention to Aston Villa. Pay attention to Brighton. What? Look. Realistically speaking, as Shaka just mentioned, this is indeed a 3-horse race. I saw a segment from the show while I was on vacation, because that's my commitment to ESPN FC. I saw a segment in which I believe Mark Ogden was trying to push the idea that this would be the closest or most competitive title race in years because there would be 3 and at least 4 teams. And even squeezing 4 into that conversation was difficult to do for Mark. In fact, I think that Dan, who was hosting the show that day, called him a liar. He said, I don't believe you. You were forced to write this by the editors of your whatever, the website, right? And that's us trying to squeeze, or not us, Mark, squeeze 4 teams into this conversation. 9? Are you joking?
I would love to know who he thinks the 9 up.
Well, we just put a list of 10 of the odds to win, and that included Aston Villa, Brighton, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, and I'm just saying,
Goodness me.
It's lies. It's Captain Deflecto. It's pay attention to those guys. Don't pay attention to us. It's not. Don't put this sort of pressure already on us.
Is that what it is? Is it Arteta?
Manchester United in that 10?
Well, I'm just saying.
Goodness
But does this tell us, Ian, that Arteta's already feeling the pressure with the money that's spent and potentially could be spent if Gyökeres comes in? Is this showing us that he's already feeling the pressure?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're trying to lower expectations, but you can't do that at a club like Arsenal because the expectations, and they have been since he took over, are absolutely huge. I'm trying to think, though, who the 9 could be. like the guys. I mean, we haven't mentioned, what about Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United? The notable flops from last season. You probably have to think about Crystal Palace, who, if they kept, imagine that they kept Mateta, Eza, Gahi and Adam Wharton, if there's going to be a surprise package, not in the title race, but to go very well next season, it might be them.